Xbox Game Pass really does contain a wealth of single player games, and if you're like me, these are your favourite sort of games to play right now in 2026. It can be very hard to narrow down though which single player stories are definitely worth diving into, especially as Xbox Game Pass is now home to over 500 games for us to play. So what I've done is I've narrowed down the 15 best single player games that you can play right now on Xbox Game Pass in 2026. I will be updating this list a little bit later on this year as we will get more and more games being added, so do subscribe and let's just dive right into it. First up though, and if you're looking for one of the biggest action games that is available on Game Pass right now, then Warhammer 40k Space Marine 2 absolutely does deserve your attention. This is a full-throttle third-person shooter adventure that follows you straight into the brutal universe of Warhammer 40k and does put you back in control of Captain Titus, but this time he'll lead the fight against overwhelming Tyranid swarms and the forces of chaos. The campaign alone is just so cinematic, it's packed with massive battles and relentless combat, and beyond that there's also a substantial cooperative operation mode that does expand with new missions, enemies, and some enormous creatures for you to take down with your friends. I mean, you even have a PvP multiplayer mode which offers old school competitive feelings that we haven't seen since the 360 era, but alone the single player is just worth it itself. If you do enjoy explosive action games with the spectacle of a single player story to delve into, then please play this one, as it was possibly my game of the year for 2024. Planet of Lana 2 Children of the Leaf only landed onto Xbox Game Pass this current month, and this was one indeed that you definitely need to play. This is of course the follow-up to the original Planet of Lana, and once again it will follow both Lana and a lovable companion named Mui, but this time they'll be delving deeper into Novo to essentially figure out the secrets of why those robots arrived. This one really did provide us with a gut-wrenching story without the need for a real-world dialogue, and that's all alongside some great platforming and a ton of puzzles for you to solve. The devs have also added in a ton of new features which were incredibly welcome, and it really did improve so much on that first entry. I've honestly played this one and completed it to 100%, and you can check out my full review here on the channel if you do want to see and hear more about this one before delving into it. The largest addition this year so far though just has to be for Kingdom Come Deliverance 2, and as someone who absolutely adores this franchise, please just drop everything and play this utter gem. To me, this was honestly my game of the year of last year, and upon playing it, you will understand my sentiment as well. This one does continue the story of Henry though, as he's now looking after Hans Capon in the ever-expanding world of Bohemia. KCD1 was great and was also recently added to Game Pass, but for me, Kingdom Come Deliverance 2 is the definition of a perfect sequel. I very much enjoyed playing both games, but to be honest, that second entry does take the cake for me. It did change everything I didn't like from the first game, and then just improved on it tenfold. I love everything about this game and had an incredible time with it over my 200-hour playthrough, and I fully immersed myself throughout it. The story is a great improvement as well from the previous one, and the amount of content included here is just insane. I cannot recommend this one enough, but talking of recommendations, please do subscribe down below, as over 67% of you are not part of the largest independent Xbox channel here on YouTube. I do cover everything from news, Xbox reviews, updates, and so much more every single day, and I even have some Crimson Desert stuff coming your way very soon. Now let's get back into the games, as we have another massive title that only landed to us in the past couple of weeks. One of the biggest single player games which you can play right now with your Game Pass subscription is Cyberpunk 2077, and this game really gave us the chance to experience Night City, but in the best way possible, as it's been massively improved since its launch. It is kind of wild to think how far the game has come, and the added updates just make it stand out amongst the crowd. CD Projekt Red has spent years rebuilding this one and improving the overall experience with some major patches, gameplay changes, and new content, and the result is completely different to what I actually played all the way back in 2020. The city itself though is still one of the most impressive open worlds in all of gaming. It's packed with some great stories, choices, and even chaotic shootouts, and some very high-speed chases. If you've been waiting for the right moment to jump in, then this is easily it. With everything that's been added and improved, Cyberpunk 2077 now feels like the game it was always meant to be, and the story is also pretty fantastic as well. Honestly, it's been AAA central so far in 2026, and another single-player adventure game which you need to try out is Avatar: Frontiers of Pandora. This one was also added only a couple of months ago, but it's an open-world action-adventure game which really drops you into the western frontier, and you'll be playing as a Navi who was taken and raised by the RDA before eventually escaping and then returning to your true clan. From there, it's about rediscovering your identity, reconnecting with the different clans out there, and pushing back against the human forces that are threatening Pandora. One of the biggest recent additions though is going to be the new third-person mode. It completely changed how the game utterly felt, and it makes exploring just even more immersive and so much better. I just wish they added it in the first place. place. I've personally been delving into this one for the first time, and it is fantastic, especially after watching that newest Avatar film, which is great as well, by the way. I think it's probably one of the best Ubisoft games we've had received in quite some time, and you need to try it out if you do get the chance. Keeping in line with the insanely strong single-player lineup though, I might as well introduce you to the mighty Death Stranding, and this one was only a recent addition as well, and yes, within 2026, it has actually been that insane. What is fantastic though is that this is the director's cut, and this edition added even more to Kojima's strange yet compelling vision. As Sam Porter Bridges, you'll be traversing haunting windswept landscapes on a quest to reconnect isolated cities. It is part walking sim, part physics puzzle, and part social experiment with asynchronous online features that make the world feel shared even in its solitude. It was so great actually seeing this game finally being freed from the shackles of PlayStation, and I do fully expect this will also be the case for Death Stranding 2 in the near future. It won't gel for everyone, but the only way to know if you will enjoy this Kojima masterpiece is by trying it right now with Xbox Game Pass. With all of the buzz surrounding Resident Evil Requiem over the past couple of weeks, I kind of feel like it's the perfect moment to actually remind you that Resident Evil Village is also on Xbox Game Pass. This newest entry though did continue the story of Ethan Winters a few years after the events of RE7, and it did throw him into a mysterious and dangerous European village that is filled with strange creatures and terrifying threats. The game is widely considered one of the stronger modern Resident Evil titles, with players constantly praising its incredible atmosphere, and that's alongside of course the memorable villains and the beautifully crafted locations. From the eerie castles to unsettling forests, the environments really do help sell that horror element of it. It also delivers plenty of tense moments mixed with action as the story does unfold. I will be honest, horror games usually aren't my thing, so I've personally stayed away from this one, but with the overwhelming praise that it has received, this is definitely a single player game that's definitely worth diving into. Of course, many of you watching this video, or pretty much everyone out there, already knows about Clair Obscur Expedition 33, and for very good reason. This game is one of the most talked about RPGs in over the past decades, and I was so happy to see it win Game of the Year, although I did feel that Kingdom Come Deliverance 2 got overshadowed quite a bit. Visually though, the game is absolutely breathtaking. Almost every scene here feels like a living piece of artwork brought to life with incredible attention to detail in both the environment and the characters. What really surprised me though was the combat, and while it's technically turn-based, it does mix in some cool real-time mechanics and keeps you actively involved in every fight. The story is another highlight for me, delivering such a powerful and emotional journey, and I won't be afraid to admit that I did have a tear in my eye once or twice throughout my entire playthrough. Honestly, this is one of those rare games that reminds us why we love the medium in the first place. I strongly recommend you give it a chance, and you can check out my review here on the channel. I know South of Midnight ended up being a little bit divisive for some players out there, but personally I had an absolute blast with it, and I'd highly recommend it to anyone, especially if you've got a Game Pass subscription. It's definitely more of a sort of AA experience rather than a huge blockbuster, yet that kind of works in its favour. What immediately stands out though is going to be the presentation here. The art style is incredibly distinctive and paired with one of the most memorable soundtracks that I've heard in quite some time. The story does follow Hazel though as she searches for her mother after a devastating storm that tears through her home. Along the way, she then becomes something known as a Weaver, and will be using those supernatural abilities to repair the world and uncover the hidden pain and secrets that have been left behind. There is some light combat and a few interesting boss encounters, although that's probably the weakest part of the entire game for me. Still, if you enjoyed story-driven platformers with great music and atmosphere, then this is absolutely worth checking out. And with Clair Obscur, I have got a review here on the channel as well, so do check it out before diving into it. It is quite safe to say that post-apocalyptic games were really the rage in 2025, but Atomfall is one that I really did end up enjoying more than I kind of expected. It's not a massive blockbuster, and it definitely has quite a few rough edges here and there, but the setting alone makes it really stand out amongst the crowd. The game drops you into the quarantine zone following the real-life wind-scale nuclear disaster, and from the moment you wake up is all about figuring out how to survive. You will spend your time scavenging for different resources here and there, crafting your gear, and then just exploring those eerie countryside locations and meeting some very eccentric characters along the way. A lot of people have jokingly called out Fallout in the UK, which honestly isn't a kind of bad comparison though in terms of its atmosphere. Mechanically, it doesn't always feel super polished. It does have some sort of bits and bobs where it doesn't really make any sense, but where it does really shine is within its storytelling aspect. There's a ton of hidden lore around the map, and discovering it is what makes the experience just so bloody memorable. It certainly won't click for everyone, and that's kind of okay, but it's definitely a unique one on this list today. A huge single player game that did return to Xbox Game Pass was the absolutely excellent Hades. With the game now being just over 5 years old, yeah, I can't really believe it's been that long, there is no better time to jump into this roguelike and experience it, especially if you've never had a chance to before. This one has you battling multiple enemies and bosses from Greek myth in the underworld, and it's so bloody addictive. As the immortal prince of the underworld, you will be wielding different powers and mythic weapons of Olympus to break free from the clutches of the god of the dead himself, while growing stronger and unraveling more of the story with each unique escape attempt. It is really a genre-defining game in the same way that Doom or Portal are, and for very good reason. Hades is an utter masterpiece. It deserves its place in the pantheon of instant classics, and you need to play it as soon as possible. A bit of a weird game, and one that certainly had intrigued me from the very start, was Indica. This game received some very high praise in a lot of circles out there, but it kind of failed to skim the surface in an industry that's been teeming with some brand new horror IPs and anticipated legacy sequels from some of the most iconic horror franchises out there. However, with Indica now on Xbox Game Pass, you do have the chance to finally experience it, and although you may be a little bit weirded out for sure, it's one of the most unique single player games that I've played in years. This one really gets bizarre, surreal, funny, and even scary. It's then all kind of rolled up into a religious, self-reflective pilgrimage that is charmingly poignant in an alternative 19th century Russia, and it is complete as well with 2D pixel art minigames, which I wasn't expecting, and it does complement Indica's normally photorealistic visuals. It has reviewed so well across the board, and it's such a great single player game for you to dive right into. Not every remaster really needs to exist, but Oblivion is one that absolutely deserves the treatment, and it did so to perfect effect. This was the game that really pulled so many players into RPGs back in the day, and seeing Cyrodiil being refreshed for modern hardware brought a serious wave of nostalgia for me. The sweeping landscapes, those iconic Oblivion gates just tearing up the open skies, and the busy streets of the Imperial City all look fantastic, while still keeping the charm that made the original so memorable. What truly defined Oblivion though wasn't just the freedom it gave us, instead it gave you the ability to dive deep into guild questlines, get lost into strange and often hilarious side quests, or simply wander the world doing whatever you feel like. Sure, it does have some quirks, and it still has some rough edges, especially in performance, even so until this day, but that's kind of part of the identity of this one. For longtime fans, it was a brilliant revisit, and for newcomers, it finally was the perfect chance to finally experience it for the very first time. Although Xbox did certainly do them dirty and decided to get rid of Tango Gameworks at the time, their latest game, Hi-Fi Rush, is one of those games that instantly stands out. It's utterly fantastic, and it's such a shame that they closed down the studio. I am glad though that they have been revived, but hey, I'll be interested to see what their next game brings to the table. This one though really did blend rhythm mechanics with fast-paced action, and it kind of wrapped it in a bright comic book art style presentation, and it was bursting with so much personality. In case you're wondering though, you will play as Chai, who's an aspiring rock star, and he then ends up with a music player fused to his chest after a corporate experiment goes wrong, and it causes everything he does to sync perfectly with the beats. In that instance, the combat solely revolves around timing your attacks, dodges, and special moves to the rhythm of said soundtrack, which makes every fight feel like part of a living performance. Alongside the combat though, there is also platforming, exploration, and plenty of hidden secrets, and it's a single player game that you need to play right now in 2026. One of the standout first-party Xbox releases for this entire generation has to be Indiana Jones and the Great Circle. If you somehow skipped this one so far, I genuinely think you're missing out on probably one of the best games of this generation. Machine Games absolutely nailed the feeling of stepping into Indy's boots, delivering an adventure that captures the spirit of the films while still feeling like a proper modern video game. The story does send you across several different locations around the world as you hunt for a mysterious artifact, and naturally things will spiral out of control pretty quickly. Along the way, you'll be climbing ancient ruins, solving clever environmental puzzles, sneaking past enemies, and occasionally cracking out the whip or pulling out a revolver for when things get messy. The attention to detail in the world design and storytelling is utterly phenomenal, and even if you're not a massive fan of Indiana Jones, it's still an adventure that's totally worth experiencing. What single player game do you recommend on Xbox Game Pass? Do let me and others know who watch this video down below, as I'm always intrigued to see what you guys really do recommend. Do subscribe as well for Xbox content like this every single day, and do check out the video on screen now if you want to check out my Planet of Lana 2 review, because as I mentioned, it's an incredible single player game you need to try as soon as possible.